could prepare you for an experience like this.
What is the truth, Harry?
Miracle Mile.
Listen, I'm just a guy who picked up the phone.
And a hearty welcome to one and all. We're back in the car for episode 199. Wow. Of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of this Wednesday afternoon drive with me here in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, and turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. So episode 199 will be the 18th entry in our ongoing series of the best movie you've never seen. And this is a film that I am fairly confident that you haven't seen, even if you're watching a movie podcast. The film in question is Steve DeJarnet's 1988 paranoia, apocalyptic, it's the end of the world as we know it and I don't feel fine thriller, Miracle Mile, starring Goose himself, Anthony Edwards, a couple of years after Top Gun, Mare Winningham, who was kind of a member of the Brat Pack because she was in St. Elmo's Fire, among others, and Denise Crosby, sort of a genre standard actress of the day. She was in the Pet Sematary movie not long after that. And the terrific Brian Thompson, who played the leader of the gang of, I guess you could call them serial killers, in Sylvester Stallone's Cobra. And Miracle Mile was a movie that I had seen it advertised on TV, but a lot of the critical reviews were really bad. Like, the film was trashed by a number of critics, but then there were other critics that loved it and thought that it did something different. It tried to go in a different direction, and it took the notion of an apocalyptic thriller seriously and did it in a way that it doesn't feel as if it's a low budget. I think the film had kind of a low-ish budget, but it doesn't feel as if it's low budget. It feels like this is just how a story such as the one that they're telling would unfold. So Anthony Edwards didn't get to play that many leads, unfortunately. Very talented actor. My generation, we loved him in Revenge of the Nerds, and he really is great in Top Gun with Tom Cruise and Val and the rest of the cast. Meg Ryan plays his wife in the movie. What's his name? Rick Rossovich. I always forget. Rick Rossovich is fucking hilarious in Top Gun. But Anthony Edwards plays the lead. He's a young, I guess he's supposed to be in his mid-20s. He could be slightly older. A young musician who has what the late, great Pulitzer Prize-winning film critic, who I always reference, Roger Ebert, he has what's called a meet cute with a similarly aged and very compatible young woman. That's the Mare Winningham character. He plays a guy named Harry, and she's a young waitress in a nearby diner named Julie. And they have just met, but they have the sort of meet cute where, and not just because it's a movie, these are two people who are destined to have a long-term relationship. I'm not going to say together forever. They're 25 years old, maybe together for a couple of months. And there's a power outage, a kind of weird power outage. He's supposed to meet her when she gets off of work. And he oversleeps, not because he forgets to set his alarm. She works like an overnight. He's supposed to pick her up at 3 a.m., something like that. And there's a power outage, and because of the power outage, he oversleeps. And he goes to the diner where she works, but he's crazy late. And when he didn't show up, she became incredibly depressed and is trying to figure out where she lives. And as he's in a state of panic because maybe he's blown his opportunity with this girl, who could be the girl of his dreams, who knows, he gets a phone call on a payphone not far from the diner. Now, bear in mind, it is the dark of night. It is pitch black. It's not even 4 a.m. yet. Doesn't matter what time of year it is in L.A. The sun ain't coming up anytime soon. So he gets a phone call, random payphone. He answers the call. And the man on the other end of the line sounds very young, such as Harry's character. He sounds like a young man, maybe in his 20s. And he's crying, and he's in hysterics. He's yelling, "Dad! Dad!" Harry says, "Dad, you just called a payphone. Are you okay? What's going on?" The young man calling, trying to get his father on the phone, dialed the wrong number, and he got this payphone. It was one of those where it should have been 6-8, but he dialed 8-6 or something like that. And Harry says, "What happened? Are you okay? Where are you?" Because it's just so weird to get a panicked, hysterical phone call. The guy basically lays it out for him. He says, "I'm trying to get my dad on the line, but I'll tell you what I know. The world is going to end in about 80 minutes, maybe 90 minutes. Russia just attacked, and we sent everything back their way, and we're going to get hit first. The world's about to end. I just wanted to tell my dad I loved him." Words to that effect. Now, I don't know what I would do if given that information. Bear in mind, there's no internet. It's 35 plus years ago. There's no text messaging. There's no social media. Information still travels pretty slow. I don't know what I would have done in 1989. I know what I would do now. I would be all over social media finding if there is anything to find out about what the fuck might be going on. Is this a crank call? Is this some lunatic? What's going on? The guy is so panicked and so insistent and so despondent all at once. Well, we as the audience know that he's not full of shit, because if he is, there's no movie. But we don't know exactly whether he's giving us the straight story or whether he doesn't know everything. Maybe this might happen, or maybe it's a training exercise. Who the fuck knows? But as far as he knows, we got 90 minutes. We're all dead. So Harry, after hanging up the phone, he has a full-on panic. And he goes into the diner and he tells everybody what's going on and this phone call that he got. And the reactions of the people in the diner, it doesn't matter whether it's 1988 or 2024, it could be 1950. Some people react where they immediately dismiss what Harry is telling them. He's drunk. This kid's a fucking crank. I know him. He's a piece of shit. Or, why would he make up a story like this? He might be telling the truth. And the guy he was on the phone with, this could be real. So the Denise Crosby character, who is a bit of a skeptic, but she has connections. She also has a 1988 era cell phone. It looks like a stereo. It's pretty big. It's as big as her head. She says, well, hold on. Before everybody gets angry and loses their shit one way or another, let me make a phone call. I think she was a reporter, a journalist, or something like that, but she's got connections. She said, I have the direct line to a number of people in Congress. I might be able to surmise something. Let's all not go crazy. Give me a couple of minutes. So even the kind of angriest of the patrons who are getting ready to throw Harry out on his ass, she's reasonable, and everybody in there respects her. So she makes a couple of phone calls, and one senator is suspiciously not coming in today. A congressman is not coming in today. Another person just left for Alaska. Now, that doesn't prove anything, but that's very, very suspicious. Or, in the immortal words of Cardi B, that's suspicious. That's weird. So a few people are still saying, fuck this. there are others, and most of the people in a diner are now panicking as well. Harry's problem is, if the world is going to end, and this is where it gets a little corny if you're not into it, me watching this movie as a 15-year-old kid on HBO and fucking knocked out and floored, and I was paying rapt attention. I was hooked from the first 5 minutes. He has to find Julie. That is his primary, secondary, and tertiary focus. He feels such a deep connection with her, even though they just met. And he may have already ruined it by oversleeping, but it wasn't his fault. I swear, it wasn't my fault. He's got to find her. So he starts off with this kind of motley crew of people that were in the diner on a bus. Is it a bus, a big van, whatever it is, and they're basically going to the airport. It's a kind of a real half-baked idea that they're going to suddenly get a plane up in the air. It's fucking stupid. It's not something that I was thinking of the first time seeing it, but thinking about the movie now, that's not really the best idea. You probably should have done this 8 hours ago before anybody except a couple of people connected knew what may or may not was going on. So he gets off this caravan and sets off to find his beloved, who he has known, and maybe he spent 2 hours with her. But it's a movie, right? He sets off to find her, and he does. Not really much of a spoiler, because I said that Mare Winningham's in the movie. We got to see her at some point. And the film then becomes as much of a meditation on what we might do in the same situation. And we've all dealt with this kind of, it's not really a Faustian bargain, but it's more of a Rorschach test, or a Rorschach type of question, as far as if the world is ending in 90 minutes, would you want to know? Or would you rather the world end and your world end with a brief flash, and then whatever afterlife might await or not? What would you rather? And in the world of this movie, the film very clearly is on the side of, as horrible as it is, it's better to know. It's better to know. You're dead either way in almost every instance here, assuming that phone call is real and the senator's mysteriously disappearing is connected. But you'd rather know. And even as a kid, 15, watching the film for the first time and pondering these questions, that was the conclusion that I drew. I would want to know. Even if I couldn't save myself or anyone I loved, I would want to know. And if it was in any way possible for me to spend my final moments with people I cared about, yeah, that's how I would want to go. And in the movie, from what we can gather, Harry is a bit of a loner. And Anthony Edwards, man, what a terrific actor. We know that he had TV success on ER. He's just great. He's so good. And in this movie, he hits all of the right notes of the kind of love struck, that part of it, and the fear and the single-mindedness. If the world's going to end, I got to see her. He does everything well in this film. And I was remembering, or while I was watching the movie for the first time, and I was so hooked and so into the story, I was kind of wondering why some of the critical reviews I saw were harsh. It's like, it's a gripping story, and yeah, you could say some of the actors appear to be out of central casting, and the reactions in some of the scenes are overblown. It had me from the first, as I said, first couple of minutes till the end. So when Harry and Julie, Anthony Edwards and Mare Winningham, it's another thing the film gets right. It's a believable couple. This is not a matinee idol looking guy or matinee idol looking gal getting together. These are two more or less average Joes. Average Joe, average Jane, whatever. Mare Winningham is very striking, but she is attractive within normal parameters. And Anthony Edwards is not an ugly guy, but he doesn't look like a movie star. And for this movie, he was exactly the right kind of actor to cast. Oh, and before I forget, I should point out, because this is the kind of stuff I always forget, the musical score is done by a very well-remembered and very strong group called Tangerine Dream. They did a number of synth scores in the 80s, and they famously ended up doing a score for Ridley Scott's Legend when Sid Sheinberg at MCA Universal took the movie, Ridley Scott's 2+ hour cut, and chopped it up. He brought in Tangerine Dream to do an interpretation of Jerry Goldsmith's original, majestic, one of his best scores. And they punted it off the film because it wasn't going to fit, because it was an old school classic orchestral score, as Goldsmith did that as well as anybody, any composer in the business. He didn't have his scores didn't necessarily have the heights and the peaks of John Williams, but Goldsmith's old school orchestral scores, but in particular for the movie Legend, it's available on the director's cut, which is the only version of the movie that I recommend you see. It's incredible. Tangerine Dream did a good interpretation of it, but they shouldn't have been contracted in the first place. The movie should not have been fucked with, and Sid Sheinberg, as he did with Terry Gilliam's Brazil in the same year, he fucked up. What are you gonna do? But Tangerine Dream did an original score for the movie Miracle Mile, and up to that point in my life, accepting Chariots of Fire and Superman and Star Wars and those kinds of iconic scores that we all know and love, Tangerine Dream score for Miracle Mile is incredible. It is a beautiful series of tracks and compositions. Not much more to say. I can't really describe why it's great, but it is a great musical score and adds immensely to the emotional impact, in my opinion, of this film. So Harry and Julie are caught between, are they really going to try to somehow get to any kind of safe haven? Are there any underground tunnels? If they go below ground, could they possibly be safe if they're in a fallout shelter? All of these questions are asked because many of the big cities during the 50s, during the atomic era, fallout shelters, just in case we got hit with an H-bomb, I guess, or some other kind of, maybe even a chemical attack. There's a question of how desperate are we to try to save ourselves, or do we just want to spend our last minutes together? And Brian Thompson, who, as I said, plays the lead psycho serial killer, the New World Order. And it's kind of funny, Hulk Hogan 10 years later, the New World Order of wrestling, brother. This crap represents these fans out here. In a movie Cobra, Brian Thompson is the leader of this gang of murderers and mayhem doers, almost like people in Fight Club, only that Brad Pitt wasn't killing people, if it was even Brad Pitt. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But Brian Thompson was a very interesting looking guy. He's had a terrific career. Very solid actor, despite the fact that he is a little unconventional looking, and very well built, very muscular, and an intimidating personality. He doesn't play that kind of role in this film. He ends up being kind of on the side of Harry and Julie. And when we see him, we assume he's going to be a heavy, and he's not. And it's good to see him in that kind of role. But ultimately, without spoiling it, Harry and Julie, if it's going to be the last 10 or 20 minutes of their lives, they simply want to be together. And from a more serious, way more serious angle than Chevy Chase and Donna Dixon at what we think is going to be the tragic end of the otherwise hysterical John Landis comedy Spies Like Us, when it appears that Chevy and Dan have destroyed, they're going to be responsible for the destruction of the entire planet because they sent a nuke from Russia to the United States. Want to go out with a bang? Yeah. So Chevy and Donna, rather than try to figure out, well, maybe there's a way we can recall this missile, they just go off to have sex. That's great. Dan Aykroyd decides to put his thinking cap on, and he figures out a way to recall the missiles. Ultimately, Dan Aykroyd's character, Austin Milbarge, ends up saving the world, spoiler alert, in guilty pleasure movie, Spies Like Us. This film is not that film. And I remember as a virginal 15-year-old, being a little bit, I start giggling, and probably, even though I was watching the movie by myself, turning red and just being stupid, when I realized that they're pulling each other's clothes off. And then I'm like, well, they're going to have sex? They're about to die. Well, and your point is, I get it. I understand. It makes perfect sense. Why? 15-year-old me just got angry. But as an older person, if this is it, it's, I hate to say it like this, but it's not the worst way to go. The fact that you're going to die because of some fuck up in a missile silo, or because some idiot pulled a button or pushed a button, hit a switch that they shouldn't have. Judgment-free zone here. Judgment-free zone. So ultimately, it's not a movie about World War III. And maybe it isn't even a movie about Armageddon, or maybe it is. Just as a film called Deterrence. A really good movie with Kevin Pollak and a fantastic all-star cast, where Kevin Pollak plays a president who's snowed in a Colorado diner as World War III might be unfolding outside of this diner. What Miracle Mile gets right is the fear and the need for community and the need for interpersonal connection, and the fact that there are times where we don't want to be alone, and we shouldn't be alone, and how important it is, if you make a connection, to do everything you can to sustain it, to not lose it, even if you oversleep and miss a 3 a.m. date. Fight to repair the damage. And normally, when something like that will take place, you're not dealing with an Armageddon situation. But in the world of this movie, you probably are. And I'm not going to say any more. I'm not spoiling anything. This is one of those movies that, even though the Rotten Tomatoes score is not great, I will vouch for this. I don't consider this a guilty pleasure. I consider this a terrific film that takes its themes and its substance very seriously, and the cast, especially the primary cast, both Anthony Edwards and Mare Winningham, are just great in their roles. They both sell it. And Mare Winningham, this isn't really a spoiler, her character kind of went on a bender. She was so depressed that Harry, Anthony Edwards, didn't show up for their date, that she drank a little bit too much. And the way that she slowly sobers up is something that I appreciate. That also went over my head when I first saw the film. But they at least tried to keep it believable, because we see movies where characters have an amount of alcohol where they would have to be affected and they're not. The way that she seems to kind of come to from one scene to the next, it's a very carefully calibrated performance by her. And it's not even a question of it being underrated. The film just bombed at the box office, and a lot of people said it sucked. But it's a very good performance, and the fact that the filmmaker was canny enough and was cognizant enough to presumably give her the direction, okay, play this one as if now you're only 3 drinks deep. Now you're only 2 drinks deep. Now you're just about sober. Now you're sober. It's a small thing, but it sells it for me anyway, seeing the film not that long ago once again. But Miracle Mile is available for streaming. It's on the Tubi app as we speak. That's a free app. I don't know if there is, because there are ads, but I don't know if there's, like, if you pay $1 or $2, it's ad free. I'm not sure about that. And it's also on Pluto, but Pluto, it's too many commercials. Tubi, you deal with a couple of commercials every 20 minutes or half hour. It's not the end of the world, but Pluto is like 5 minutes of commercials and 10 minutes of movie. They'll take an hour and a half film and it'll be 2 hours and 15 minutes. So don't even bother with Pluto. But Miracle Mile, an apocalyptic thriller done right on a lower key, or in a lower key and on a smaller scale than you would expect from a film set in the Los Angeles of the late 1980s. Directed by Steve DeJarnette and starring Anthony Edwards, Mare Winningham, and Denise Crosby, with a magnificent musical score by Tangerine Dream. This has been episode 199 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for taking this Wednesday afternoon drive with me here in New York. And if you caught this episode on the YouTube channel, enjoyed it, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you caught this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 200 real soon. Till then, peace.